Ministers, alongside 16 other campus ministers, we serve the Greater Los Angeles Church of Christ. God has really been glorified. We had this event called Reality 14 in which we saw God really move. We saw 1,350 people come out to this event, and we saw some great speakers really preach the word and show how God's word is relevant in areas like sexuality and the media. God's really been glorified.
And just recently, a couple weeks ago, we kicked off our summer internship called Launch. There are over 100 students right now being trained for leadership. You know, our kickoff, we actually tied in deep sea fishing with learning how to be fishers of men. And in just a couple of weeks, we're going to be taught by expert potters and an expert MMA fighter how we are molded and shaped by God and ultimately learning how to engage in a spiritual battle. Please be praying for us.
And two of our other major universities, we've seen God move. At USC, we saw a guy from the national track team become a disciple, and he was very fruitful. When as he became a disciple, he went ahead and reached out to a lot of his friends, and some of them became disciples in other regions like the Inland Empire. At UCLA, we saw a guy named Josh Thomas, who was on the basketball team at the time, and now is serving on the part of the Chief Justice team of the Greek Society. God is really moving. Please be praying for us. May God be the glory.
Hi, my name's Evan Grimes, and I'm here with my wife, Bree Grimes, and we're here to share some good news from the Southwest. We both serve in the San Diego State campus ministry, and we're very excited to tell you what God has been doing. This past year, we had the goal of breaking through 100 students in our ministry, and we started out with about 80, and right now we're at 110, and we've really seen God move in a powerful way. We've seen 20 baptisms in the past year, and it's just awesome to see how He's been moving.
I just want to share on the women's ministry in San Diego. It's been amazing to see God mature and raise up women in our ministry. And I want to share specifically about a sister at San Diego State. Her name's Shannon Keys. And as a freshman in the dorm, she joined a sorority, Delta Gamma, and was searching for a purpose. And God really led her to our women in our ministry. She studied the Bible, became a Christian, and it's been amazing just to see her take hold of that purpose. And she's already eager to learn and to be trained to see how she can serve God in our kingdom.
Yeah, and also on the Southwest end, I want to share some good news from Tucson. Tucson, we planted a church 2 years ago, and there were 0 disciples at the U of A campus. And now there are 14 total disciples on that campus. And in this past year, they've seen 8 get baptized. And God's really been moving down there as well. As well as Arizona State University, 2 singles have left their jobs to serve in a full-time position. And we're just so excited to see God work in the Southwest.
Hey, I'm Rob Novak, and this is my gorgeous wife Chelsea from the New Jersey region of the New York City Church, and we bring good news from the New York and New Jersey family of churches. Among us are currently 280 disciples in the campus ministry, spread out on 45 different colleges. Since ICMC last year, we've seen 80 people baptized and restored.
Our campus ministries are currently doing service projects through Hope Worldwide, including Hurricane Sandy relief and Camp Hope for Kids.
Last month, we took our annual special missions contribution to support churches in Africa, the Caribbean, Canada, and New York. And we collected over $1,100,000 to support those churches. One of them, the church in Abidjan, has seen 400 people become Christians in the last 2 years and recently planted a church in Gagnua.
Last year, we had our first New York, New Jersey campus spring retreat. We had 230 people come out. And this year, God blew us away. We had 360 people come. 120 of them were visitors.
The Albany campus ministry has recently grown from 1 to 6 disciples. The Syracuse campus came to ICMC last year with 7, and I've seen 4 people saved since then. The Rochester church was recently started by a married couple, and they've already grown from 2 to 16, and 4 of them are in their campus ministry. The Central New Jersey church saw most of their graduates this year go on into the ministry or away on one-year challenges. And last year, they planted the Shore Points New Jersey church, who very recently have seen 4 people baptized into their campus ministry. And lastly, the New York City campus ministry. In 2012, we were 160 disciples, and today are over 225 disciples. In the last year and a half, we've seen 90 people baptized and restored.
This summer, we're having a campus ministry internship where 25 people from all over the country have come to New York to get trained and to change the world.
God is doing great things in New York and New Jersey. Keep us in your prayers. Thank you.
Hey guys, my name is Sebastian Asta. Me and my wife Becky recently moved to Seattle to lead the campus ministry there from Connecticut. So we've been there since October, and it's just been an awesome transition. We've just loved the church there. The church is doing great. It's healthy, it's strong, and the campus is doing great. We work at the University of Washington and Seattle Pacific University, and this past year we've been praying for 15 baptisms. God blessed us to this point with 16 baptisms, so it's been awesome being there. He's really just been moving across the whole Northwest region. Even in the past 2 years, the Northwest has baptized about 56 disciples, and that's more than 28 than the previous year, so we're super fired up about what's going on there. We're also shooting to plant campus ministries at almost every single major university in the Northwest, -4. So we're just really excited about what's going on in the Northwest. We're seeking to plant a campus in 2015 in Eugene, Oregon at the University of Oregon, and as well as Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. So those are huge campuses with a lot of people to be met, and we're super excited about going there. So pray for the ministries there and the mission teams being sent out to those areas. As well, the devotion to feeding the future generations of our church has been shown in the Northwest. We've went to from five full-time ministry members in the campus to 12. So it's awesome just how much it's been growing, and just how God has been adding to the number, both in full-time ministry staff and non-full-time, but it's just great to see how God is moving in the Northwest. Amen.
Awesome. Wow, it is so encouraging to hear great news. My name is Robin Hawkins. I'm married to Vince Hawkins, and I just want to quickly thank the St. Louis Church of Christ for hosting this amazing ICMC. It's been great. I also want to quickly thank all the committee wives who have helped plan the women's session. And just real quickly, we had 2 goals. We really wanted for the women to see the importance of being trained by an older woman, as well as the importance, and I just forgot what I was going to say, what the second reason was, but no, our breakout classes are being taught by some of those younger women who have been trained. And so you're going to get to hear from a lot of different women who have been trained, have opened up their hearts to be trained by older women in the ministry, which really transitions me into introducing our speakers this morning. I'm super excited to introduce Miss Kelly Brown. And Kelly is a veteran in the ministry. Okay, Kelly became, she's been a disciple she's been in the ministry for over 30 years. And her husband is the awesome Tom Brown. They have been training men and women for over 30 years. They started, one of the first ministry and training programs. And, Kelly was a sorority girl. She's done so many amazing things for God, converted her sorority sisters. She went into the ministry, and her husband have just, led many campus ministries successfully. But I really want for you guys to know that you're going to hear from a woman who has a deep passion for training other women, raising up other women. She sees the importance of passing on what she's learned to the next generation. And I'm really excited because after Kelly speaks, you're going to get to hear from a woman who she is currently training, Miss Courtney McGurk. And Courtney's awesome. She grew up in the church. She's a kingdom kid. She became a disciple as a teenager. She got her degree in Spanish and Latin studies, I believe. So she got a little Spanish flair going on, right? And, Courtney, she's married to Tom McGurk, and she graduated from college They got engaged or got married a couple weeks after she graduated, and then they went into the full-time ministry. And Courtney has a heart to really pass her passion on for God to other women. So I'm excited that you get to hear from her and just her heart and how she feels about God and just the importance of loving God with all your heart. So without further ado, Miss Kelly Brown.
Thank you so much. Wow. I feel like I have headlights in my eyes, so let me know you're there once in a while, okay? But it is exciting to be here, I have to say. I've prayed a lot about this. I love the theme Unshakable Women. And when I think about this group in particular, can I just share something from my heart? This group is who many of us who've been at this a very long time, 30 years, 20 years, 40 years, this is the group that we prayed for. And I've prayed for the Rebecca I just met from London. I've prayed for Sylvia I just met from Inland Empire, and her sister, I think, Natalie. Anyways, I'm meeting all these people. You're the ones that we have been praying for a very long time. And the reason for that is we want the dream to be kept alive. And you're the ones to do that. Because on down the road, you're going to be me. And you're going to be Robin. And you're going to be Barry Lusk. And Carrie Lansbury, you're going to be us. Think about that for a moment. And so that's why we've prayed so much for all of you. I just wanted you to share that with you. And I know that all of you walked in here with dreams. I know you come here to be inspired to have even bigger dreams. And my prayer is that you will leave this place with an even bigger dream than you walked in here with. I really believe that can happen. We all love to dream. I love to fantasize, about things I'm going to be doing and where I'm going to be going. It's exciting also to dream about who you want to become. And since the theme is unshakable, we're going to become unshakable women. As far as God is concerned, that's what he wants us to do. And I'm really excited about this topic. But when you think about unshakable women, are there really unshakable women in this group? I mean, honestly. There have been people going at it for 30 years. Are those the unshakable women? Or maybe it's the ones that have really been at it for 40 years, like me. Are those the unshakable women? See, first of all, I want to make it clear, there are no unshakable women in this group. When you think about that, there are no unshakable women here. We're all shaky at times, right? But I want us to think about this for a moment, because what's going to help us become unshakable women today is, number one, is understanding that we have an unshakable friend in God. That's where it's got to start, is recognizing we have an unshakable friend in God. In Zechariah 2:8, it says, whoever touches you touches the apple of my eye. What does that mean? That's how God loves you. That's how he looks at you. He's got his eye on you. He's watching you. He thinks about you. It means we're cherished above all others. That's how he thinks about you today. And I want you to leave this building feeling that way, that God really cherishes you that much, that you're the apple of his eye. There's a story about a father in Armenia. He went to take his son and drop him off at school. And he said, Armand, I'm going to come for you after school, and I'll always be there for you. And so he leaves, and not long after, an earthquake struck and just almost flattened Armenia. Within 4 minutes, or less than 4 minutes, 30,000 people were lost. It was an 8.2 earthquake, and it was devastating. But can you imagine the terror in this father's heart, thinking about his son being in that school, in that building, and rushing off there and not knowing what he was going to find? So he arrives there, and the school is just gone. It's rubble. And so he goes over and he just starts taking one stone and putting it over here. And a fireman comes up and he says, sir, you can't be here. There are fires breaking out. It's dangerous. You've got to leave now. And he begins to take another stone and just put it over here. And he takes another stone and moves it over here. And then a policeman comes up and he says, sir, it's really not safe. We'll take care of this. You just go on. But he stays, and he takes another stone, and he lifts it up, and he puts it over here. And then people start coming up. It's been 20 hours, 24 hours, and they're like, look, you need to give it up. It's over. Don't you understand? He's gone. You have to accept this. You've got to move on. And he stays, and he picks up another stone, and he moves it over here. 30 hours pass. 36 hours pass. The 38th hour, he picks up a stone and puts it on the ground. And here's a voice. Dad, is that you? I knew you'd come. I told the kids here, Dad, that if you were alive, you would come for us. You see, God always shows up. Nothing was going to keep this father from his son. We're the apple of God's eye. Do you understand? God always shows up. He's always going to be there. He swoops down like Superman to save us and rescue us. And some of us can remember the time we were baptized. What did God do? He swooped down to rescue us and remove all that debris. And think about it. Wasn't that amazing to have all that guilt? The burden of guilt, the burden of sin lifted. It was gone. It was taken away. God always shows up to rescue us. He has yet to be shaken by Satan or any of our weaknesses. He's an unshakable friend. In the very beginning, what was Satan doing? I mean, there he was. They were in the Garden of Eden, enjoying life. Life was perfect, right? And so there they are with God, and Satan comes and has to tempt them and say, hey, now if you eat that apple, you'll be as wise as God. And so Eve partakes of the apple, and it tastes good, and then she goes and tempts Adam, and of course he sins too, and they disobey God, and then they're cast out. From the very beginning, Satan has been trying to shake God and mess up his plan. But he's never been able to. He's still not shaken God. All the things he's done from the very beginning have not shaken him. When the Israelites fell and rose, he remained unshakable, right? He was still able to show compassion. Even at the cross, Satan tested him. Oh, you who are going to destroy the temple? Oh, and then rebuild it in 3 days? Well, save yourself. Oh, and come down from the cross and we'll believe in you. He was taunting him, wasn't he? Even on the cross. All the suffering, all the betrayal and scorn, even the death of a criminal could not shake him from his purpose. Nothing kept him from saving us because God is our unshakable friend. And the storms, they're coming. The tests are going to be there, right? But so is our unshakable friend. How many are daredevils out there? Any daredevils, tomboys, anybody out there? Okay. I have to say, I was a complete tomboy growing up. The guys in my neighborhood, I was always out there. If they were going to throw a football, I was going to throw it further. And I can still throw a football. So I was a complete tomboy, complete daredevil. And when I was younger, we had this huge tree by my house. And it was a really good-sized tree. And so one day I decided I'm going to climb that tree to the top. So I get up there, and I climb to the very, very top. And it's up there. So it begins swaying. It's a little breezy up there. And all of a sudden, I froze with fear. Have you ever frozen with fear? Like you literally cannot move. That's how I felt. And I literally couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. So I start screaming for my mom, Mom, help, I can't get down. So my mom runs out of the house. She looks up and goes, what are you doing up there? I want to get down. So she goes, I'm going to get your dad. So she runs in and gets my dad. He runs out, goes, I'm coming for you. So anyways, he starts climbing up there. He's a big man. He's 6'2". And so he can't climb all the way up and get me. But he goes, okay, I'm going to talk you down. So he goes, all right, just take your foot and see that branch, put it on that branch. Okay, good, you're doing good. Now take your other foot, now put it on that branch. All right, you're doing good. Come on, Kelly, you can do this. Okay, next branch is right there. Just put your foot there. And I kept coming down. Finally, I felt my dad's hand grab my ankle. And my whole body relaxed. And he said, I've got you. I've got you. You know, that's so much like God. In our lives, he's got us. He's got hold of us. In Psalm 62, 5 through 8, it says, "Find rest, O my soul, in God alone. My hope comes from him. He alone is my rock. He is my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken." We all need this unshakable friend, don't we? A God who always shows up and a God who's got us. We need that so desperately. And Jesus had this uncanny ability to show up at just the right time in the most painful situations. Think about the adulterous woman. Caught. You ever felt caught? Oh, they saw my pride, Oh, I was trying to be humble, but it came out, It's an awful feeling caught. This woman was caught in the worst of sins, immorality, adultery. I mean, how embarrassing she must have felt, thrown into the middle of this mob, looking down on her. What do we do with her, Jesus? What's the law say? I mean, she's caught. We know what sin she was in. Look at her. She probably couldn't even look up. Here she is accused, about to be stoned. And of course, Jesus turns to them and says, "He who is without sin, you cast the first stone." And they all leave. But then he challenges her, "Go and leave your life of sin." He showed up at just the right time, but he believed she could change. He didn't go, "Boy, you're really a mess, aren't you? Well, I don't know if there's much hope for you." No, he believed she could change. That's why he challenged her. The woman at the well, a woman who had no idea how to have healthy relationships. She had 5, and the guy she was with now wasn't even her husband. She was a mess. But she needed someone to ask the right questions, to show up at just the right time, and to help her believe in the living water that she wouldn't have to thirst anymore. It would well up like eternal life inside of her and give her the hope of a better life. Jesus showed up at the right time, and it's that kind of love that continues to reach out, to show up, to touch, to heal, to hurt with us, that we're forever changed by, to become unshakable women. So we all need an unshakable friend, a God who always shows up at just the right time. But how do we really become unshakable women today? First, we've got to face the facts that we're weak. We are shaky, aren't we? We got to admit that none of us is unshakable completely. We're not. Sometimes, actually, we're holding on by a string. Have you ever felt that way? Because that is Christianity. It's a battle. It's a struggle to hold on sometimes. But we keep holding on, even if it's by a string. Face the facts that we're weak without God. We can do nothing apart from him. That's what John 15 says. But let's turn over to 2 Corinthians 12. Verse 7. "To keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations, there was given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan, to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away. But he said, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that my Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong.'" You know, we've all felt weak at times. But it's not something I like to feel. I like to feel strong. I like that feeling, don't you? I don't like feeling weak. I just don't like it. But I'm supposed to be unshakable, right? Aren't we supposed to be that way? That's what we're called to be. But we don't have to be all the time because we have an unshakable friend. You see, Paul didn't like this thorn in the flesh. He didn't like his weakness. We don't know if it was a physical weakness. We don't know if it was a lot of the persecutions he had gone through, the beatings, the floggings. I mean, Paul went through a lot more than most of us will ever go through, hopefully. But he had prayed 3 times. And sometimes you can think, well, God didn't hear me, or God doesn't care about me. You know, sometimes we can be so confused by disappointments and hardships that we think, well, has God forgotten me? Am I no big deal to God? Do you think Paul might have struggled with that? Because this physical condition in the Greek, it meant an irritating enemy. Have you ever had something like that in your life? An irritating enemy. Well, let's think about it. What was God's perspective on Paul's suffering? My power is made perfect in weakness. Did you hear me? I don't know if you heard me or not. My power is made perfect in weakness. Not when I remove the weakness, when I allow it. That's crazy, God. I know I'm going to be a lot stronger without that thorn in my flesh. But we want to be strong so we can be strong, right? And I've come to realize that sometimes we can be so strong that we really miss God in the whole picture. Because we're so busy trying to be strong, to look strong. And it takes realizing how utterly dependent on God I am to actually learn to delight in my weaknesses. That's a tough thing to do. But Paul says he's going to boast about his weaknesses so Christ's power may rest on him. And this expression is like a tent covering over you. You are tabernacled in God's power. You're tabernacled. And then it says his power makes up for all my sin, all my flaws, all my weaknesses. Isn't that grace? His grace is sufficient. I think they go hand in hand. If there's no grace, there's no power. Right? His grace is so powerful, it's powerful enough to wipe out your sin over and over and over and over. It's amazing. And I just picture his grace in this room right now just covering us. It's this blanket. It's this covering. Think about that. But have you ever had an irritating situation? It just irritated you. Maybe it was one of your own weaknesses. Maybe just every time you got up to speak, you said something stupid. Has anyone ever felt that way? I mean, I was the kind of person, I just put my foot in my mouth all the time. If they said, now be sure and don't say this when you get up, I would say it. I'm like, what's wrong with me? You know, what is wrong with me? And I just literally would put my foot in my mouth in counseling situations, and Robin Williams would be like, please don't say that. I'm like, okay, I'll really work on it again. And, you know, it was just challenging. I just felt like I couldn't speak right. And I was flawed. But have you ever had an irritating thing in your life? Maybe it was someone you discipled, and they were just very, very critical of you. Maybe they're in your life for you, but you didn't want them in your life. Have you ever figured that out, that it was for you? But we have these irritating situations. Maybe your Bible talk is full of people that they just don't even talk. It's a Bible talk. You know, you're supposed to talk. You're supposed to share. And nobody talks. I mean, I remember one time we're leading a Bible talk on joy. None of my people were smiling. They had nothing to share. The non-Christians were more friendly and outgoing than they were. I thought, this is a disaster. But see, I realize I really grow when I see I can't do something or change something. And God does it in spite of me. He does it all in spite of me. Or I feel as weak as I've ever felt, and I get up and I try anyways, and he just does it in spite of me. The problem is we spend too much energy trying to be strong instead of delighting in our weaknesses. And what can happen sometimes when you have a weakness, you know how you have a blemish and you just put some powder on it. You just cover it up. You know, oh, I can cover that one up. We need to be exposing it, boasting about it, bragging about it, delighting in it. This is a new teaching, right? We don't talk this way. When we go up to one another, we want to present the good news. Oh, what's going on in your life? Oh, great things are going on. And you're always hoping people ask when you had a great quiet time. How was your quiet time, right? We always love that. But you know what? God's plan to keep transforming us into his image, it's never been to remove all the danger or all the challenges or to remove all the pain, but to walk us through those painful times because he's got us. And I bet you, when we truly discover the power of God, it's not when we feel adequate, is it, or up for the task. It's when you know it wasn't you, right? When you know it was not in you to do it. And you do it anyways. I want everyone in this room to really discover what it's like to delight in your weaknesses. I want you to think about that. We can boast about him because his grace is sufficient. It makes up for him. It fills in all the gaps. Even at our worst moments and weakest times, he can use us for his glory. The good news is, do you realize God uses the most unlikely characters to fulfill his purpose? Phew, thank goodness I'm in there somewhere. You know what I mean? I want to talk about Peter for a moment. God chose Peter. He chose these fishermen. They were probably smelly and dirty and, kind of unlikely guys. They weren't real impressive. They weren't educated. They didn't have all these degrees and accolades. They weren't smart dressers. Oh, look at that sharp dresser. I'm going to go after him. But he saw something. But you think about his character. He was so flaky. Don't you get frustrated with flaky people? Like, oh, there they go again. They can't keep their word, right? That's what it means to be flaky. And so he was always saying, now, if they all fall away, Jesus, I will never leave. Wow, that's great. Awesome. What did he do? He denied him 3 times. What about us? He was shakeable. Can we relate to his shiftiness? I mean, he kind of shifted with the wind. Whatever direction the wind was blowing in, he just shifted. He couldn't deliver. He had great claims, right? But he couldn't deliver. How about in your life? Have you ever said, I'll never miss a quiet time again? Ever. Ever, ever. Or I'll never miss another opportunity to share my faith. I'm going to be a wild woman. I'm going to share with rocks and stones, anything. I'm never going to have another impure thought. I'm just going to be the purest of pure. Remember in Matthew 16, what was Peter doing? Wasn't he telling Jesus, his Lord, you shouldn't die. You should never go to that cross. No, I don't like that plan. And Jesus turned around and said, get behind me, Satan. You don't have things of God in mind, but the things of man. See, what was the root of his problem? He didn't like being uncomfortable. He didn't like pain. He didn't like weakness. He didn't like suffering. He was shakeable. He didn't like the unpleasant things. We saw the potential, though, when he walked on water, right? Walking on water is impossible physically. Any physics majors in here? Can you explain that to me, please? Please explain that. I want to understand it, because that doesn't happen. That's amazing. So we saw his potential, but he had to face his weakness and his sin to discover the power of his unshakable friend and that God's grace was sufficient. Even after Jesus was crucified, he went back fishing. He wasn't out there being bold and calling people to be disciples. But in the end, what happened? He finally got it. He finally got it. In 1 Peter 2:21, he says, we were called to follow in his footsteps. We were called to share in his suffering. And that's exactly what he did. And history has it that Peter died upside down, crucified upside down. Why? Because he didn't feel worthy of being crucified in the same manner as his Lord and his Savior. He at least showed up in the courtyard, even though he was not where he needed to be spiritually. He wasn't proclaiming Jesus, but he was at least there. He didn't give up. He didn't leave like Judas. We all have shaky characters today. When I think about myself, I had a moment not too long ago where I've been praying a prayer for about 16 years, and it's for a family member. And it's a really agonizing situation, and I thought, I'm just going to go all out. I'm just going to really be bold with God. And I've been praying and praying and really began asking for miracles. Well, the matter actually got worse and worse and worse, and it really took me back. I felt like, wow, this is challenging. This is hard. I feel like I'm praying with the right heart, but then I got kind of mad, and I thought, well, I'm just not going to read Matthew 21 anymore because it doesn't apply to me. I mean, I know it applies to you, And all my prayers for other people, they seem to happen, but it's just not going to happen for me. So God, I'm not going to read that anymore. I'm not going to read that if you have faith, whatever you ask for, you'll receive. I don't know if I believe that. And had a moment of bitterness. Had a moment of discouragement. And had to confess it. I had to get open. I had to really deal with it. And God helped me through that to see my weakness and to see how I like to understand things. I want to understand, but I realize that I have to learn to live without answers sometimes. I don't have the answer as to why God's not answering that prayer. I don't know. I don't understand. I need help. I need help to deal with my weakness through the grace of God. Have you ever felt like it seems like you pray for something and somebody else receives that blessing? You've remained really pure-hearted and you're waiting for that boyfriend and you're like, they got a boyfriend? Where's mine? I'm waiting. You know what I'm saying? It's hard. It's hard not to get bitter. But remember, he doesn't remove the danger. He doesn't remove the disappointments. He just walks us through those times. And here's the thing. I want to go back to just my life as a young Christian was in the sorority. And I have to tell you, as a non-Christian, I was one of the most worldly people I'd ever known. I won the biggest party award in my sorority. And the girl that actually came to share with me gave me a Bible, and I threw it in the trash can. I told my roommate, what am I going to use this for? Threw it in the trash can. And so I had a long way to go. But she finally convinced me to come to a Friday night devotional, and I sat in this circle of girls, and they were just singing, and they were praying, and they were reading scriptures, and there were brothers there too, but I was really noticing that these girls were different than me. They were actually connecting with God in a way I'd never seen. And so after that, I never stopped going. I went Sunday. I went Wednesday. I went to everything. I couldn't stop. I was baptized in a month, and God's power was made perfect in me. I mean, here I was this immoral person, and I started just sharing my faith in this sorority. 9 girls became Christians in 3 years in that sorority. But we began getting a lot of persecution at a certain point. And so they nominated one girl to come and talk to us. So she knocks on the door and says, hey, I want to talk to you guys. Gail and I were roommates then, the girl I converted, first one. And so she goes, yeah, I was nominated to talk to you about not sharing your faith anymore because it's really making people feel uncomfortable. I said, oh, okay, well, what do you invite people to? She said, well, parties. And I said, okay, well, why? She said, well, it's fun, just to get together. And I go, okay, well, if you had a treasure, wouldn't you want to share that with your friends? And she said, well, yeah. I said, that's all we're doing. And as a matter of fact, we have a retreat Friday night. And I think you should come and see what we're talking about. And she goes, well, okay. And I said, great. She goes, well, make sure I'm coming. I go, don't worry, we'll get you there. She came and she was baptized in 2 weeks. God's power is made perfect in weakness. We could have felt weak. We could have felt, oh my gosh, they don't like us here. But then after I was a Christian for a while, I actually got the chapter changed from Wednesday night to Tuesday because, hey, they claim to be a Christian sorority, right? So they changed that. But I had a lot of character issues. I was still weak. And I was always getting talked to about my clothes. And so I remember Tom sitting down with me and trying to explain it. The brothers were struggling with what I was wearing, and I'm like, well, that's their problem. They need to get it together. And they need to repent of their impurity. So he didn't get very far. So anyways, encouraged me to talk to Sam Lang. I talked to Sam Lang, and he's like, well, sister, I just didn't get it. I said, I'm not wearing a sack. And so Sam said, well, sister, think about it. The brothers have to struggle enough with what people wear on campus. Why should they have to struggle with what the sisters wear in God's church? So I left with my head hanging, and I got it, and I changed. But here's the thing. Even in my dating relationship, it was tough. One minute I would have convictions, and the next minute I would waver. But see, what you need to ask yourself is, what are the areas in your life that Satan has really caused you to be shaky in? Really caused you in your convictions to be shaky, to be weak, to waver? Really caused you in your character to be shaky, to be weak? Here are the things I want us to think about. We can't begin to be our best until we're willing to look our worst. We're unshakable because of who God is, not because of who we are. And there are three things I want you to think about. Number one is delight in facing your weaknesses. Learn to delight, learn to boast of those, and figure out what are the shaky parts in your character that you can go after. Secondly, delight in God's power to take us from weakness to strength. We never stop believing he can change us, right? And delight in a God who always shows up, who is your unshakable friend.
Hello, women! I'm so excited to be here. I'm just so grateful. I'm excited to talk about what it is to be an unshakable woman, and grateful Kelly talked about it too. And I just got back, actually, from a mission team in Paris, France, just a few days ago. 16-hour, flight and a little jet lagged, but we got to take 20 of our students from North River, just the campus students, and we went for the whole month of June. And the whole month, we just shared our faith. We were in Bible talks, D groups, and we were encouraging the families in the church. We traveled to other local churches and shared our faith some more. And then we had a conference to end it out a little bit. And I'm pretty sure, when I look back on that month, God designed that month perfectly for me. I really learned in this last month just truly how unshakable I really am. And so I could come speak to you today. It's kind of funny how God worked that out, I appreciate Kelly talking about boasting in our weaknesses. That's something I want to do right now, and share some of my flaws that I saw on the mission team. I noticed how controlling I was. Plans changed or locations changed, I would just lose it, and I would be getting upset and getting attitudes. And some of us, we like knowing the plan, don't we? We don't like last minute changes. We like it perfect, I was also embarrassed of just how little energy I had. My husband, Tom, some of the people know on the team, he can go 100 miles per hour, 2 hours of sleep, be jumping up and down, singing in French, and so excited. And I'm like 8 hours of sleep, dragging my knuckles, feeling like, how am I gonna get through the day, Just so tired. It was so hard to persevere. How many of us, when we're tired, we like to set the energy bar really high when we're tired? It's hard. But as women, we set the temperature for a room, right? Whether it's warm and friendly or cold or discouraging. So it's hard. And I noticed, I also noticed I love to appear strong. I love it. But I've learned I'm so fragile, actually. And it's so funny. I noticed I love complaining. It's a bad quality, but, I complain. And making myself look like I have it all together. Oh, she's falling apart with this, and she's got this issue. Meanwhile, making myself look like I'm fine when I'm not. I can treat the mission field like a checklist. I don't know how many of us do this. Where I'm like, I shared with this many people for this many hours, and I had this many conversations at midweek, and this many quiet times, and you just get so amped, But it's all about what you've achieved and what you've done. Do you serve to check it off or to encourage God and thank God, And to be honest, it's hard to see yourself clearly, isn't it, women? It's amazing how I grew, though. But the list goes on, and we all have our lists, right? The list of things that make us shakeable. And that's why we're really here to be trained at this conference, right? And talk about this. I know some of you are asking yourself, did they pick the right girl for this lesson? She sounds so shakeable. Right? But let me tell you, I'm not here to talk about how unshakable I am, because we are shakeable women, right? Can I get an amen? But when we boast in our shakeable qualities, like Kelly talked about, that's when we're unshakable. I want us to turn to 2 Kings 2. I'm sure many of us actually know this passage. This is a story of Elijah and Elisha. Elijah was a spiritual mentor to Elisha, and they walked together everywhere. And Elijah desired to learn from Elisha. And after Elisha found out that Elijah was going to be taken up into heaven, he did not want to leave his side. I mean, every moment was precious. And he had saw Elijah do miraculous things, incredible miracles. And I know that must have caught his eye. And he just knew he wanted to be close to him. You know, the reason I chose this passage is because I think of Elijah and Elisha's relationship, and I think of me and Kelly. Because Kelly is so my Elijah. I'm so grateful that I get to learn from her and imitate her. You know, she has had so many great Elijah moments that I've been able to just experience with her, and that's been such a joy. But I want to talk to this group about being Elijahs, because we need help more than ever, because more women are just struggling with, self-esteem issues and hating themselves and giving in to like drinking and drugs, and the list goes on. But the world needs unshakable women. I believe we can learn two important, things from Elisha on how to become unshakable women. And one is we really need unshakable dreams. And the second is we need Elijahs to do the greater things. Let's jump in. 2 Kings 2, verses 9 through 10. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I can do for you before I am taken from you." "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, not." And Elijah asks a question here that many of us get from our spiritual mentors or disciplers in our life, right? Which is, how can I help you? What can I do for you? And Elisha answers, "I want a double portion of your spirit." And I think he said this because he watched him do miracles, miraculous things, right? And when he found out Elisha was going to leave him and he would have to be the man to step up and take his place, he said, "I want more. This generation, me and you, if we're going to want to see souls saved and change this world, we're going to have to want more." I don't know about you, but I don't want to be half of who Kelly is, or half of who the campus ministers, we love, or half of who our parents are. We can all do that, right? If I could just be half of who Oprah is, or half of who, you name it, you fill in the blank. It's like, Elisha wanted a double portion. Why would you want to be half of anyone, right? Are you gonna settle? It's like, me and you, we gotta want more. Elisha dreamed of more. Do you know that dreaming really helps you become an unshakable woman? Really. Here's a few reasons I think why. One, Satan hates the dreamer. He wants less. Think about that. Satan hates the dreamer, and he wants less. And he'll do anything to stop you. I mean, he could care less about you saving souls or planting seeds. He wants to plant insecurities and plant doubt, saying you're not confident enough. You don't have many strengths. You're not as good as so-and-so. You're not strong enough or spiritual, right? How often do you give into those thoughts and actually believe it? Because when we dream for God, we stop Satan and we start listening to God, rather. His voice saying, his power is made perfect in weakness, which makes you unshakable. Number two, you become more like him who is unshakable, because God is the biggest dreamer of all, right? I mean, didn't he dream me and you into existence? Didn't he? You know, number 3, dreaming keeps us from the world. When our worldly dreams are more numerous and more dominant than our kingdom dreams, we shake. And life is disappointing and it's exhausting because we can never have enough in this world. But when we know everything is shakeable on this earth, and we attach our desires to something that cannot be shaken, then we are unshakable. So is dreaming critical, to our relationship with God? Of course. Absolutely. I think it's so crucial, but without actions, it's just a nice imagination. 2 Kings 2, verses 11 through 14. It reads, as they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elisha went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them apart. He picked up the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. Then he took the cloak that had fallen from it and struck the water with it. Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah? He asked. When he struck the water, he divided it to the right and to the left and crossed over. Elijah dreamed of a double portion, right? We just read that. But when it came to picking up the cloak and striking the water, he did it. Some of us, we like to imagine the future, right? I think of a lot of us, we dream of getting married, for example, and having an amazing husband and, that can lead us and is so spiritual and really adores us, right? But fewer of us like the hard work it takes and it requires for a character to become a wife one day. That's hard to face, the actions it takes. How many of you have seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty? Anybody? Okay, so I got some. I love that movie. I'm a little bit obsessed. But The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is about a man who has this incredible imagination. And in his imagination, he's so heroic, and he's like this macho man, and he's unstoppable, and he's not afraid of anything. But then in his actual life, he's quite boring. He's kind of a loser and a little bit of a nerd. And you're kind of embarrassed of the guy because he doesn't really do anything important or really even meaningful. In the whole movie, he's just trying to work up the guts to ask this girl on a date and just can't seem to do it. And then there's this turning point in the movie where he just wanted more. And he has this job where he works for a magazine and he lost the photo that he needs to find. And so he travels to Greenland. Huge deal. Never traveled. He travels to Greenland to find this photo for his job. And there's this scene where he's running and he jumps onto this moving helicopter. And the pilot's not even sober. It's just this crazy scene. And you're like, what's the guy doing? And the movie just comes alive because he starts living his dream. And that one moment just enables him to do so much more throughout the movie. And he becomes a different person. But it's sad in the beginning. You know why? He only had a good imagination. Some of us, we talk about doing the great things. Baptizing our best friends, having a quiet time every day, doubling our ministries. But when it comes to putting in the hard work it takes to see these dreams come true, we hate it. We fight and we struggle. Do you think it's hard to jump into that helicopter? Or for Elijah to pick up the cloak after his friend, he just lost a great friend? Yes. But do you think either of them regretted it? No way. Because they both went on to do even greater things. That gave them boldness and strength to keep going. What are your helicopter moments? Do you have any? Because if you really want to see God, I mean really, it's going to take work, late nights, boldness, courage, but it's the best life you'll ever live. I want to share some of my helicopter moments, kind of dreams that have come true for me this last year. It all started with a prayer. My husband and I, we just said, we pray this prayer every day. God, we want to see things we've never seen before, that we can look back and see faith stones and know that you can do even more. And we prayed this prayer all year long, not knowing what would happen. So fall rolls around, about a year ago, and I gather my campus leader women, and I sit them down right before school starts, and I ask them, how many people do you want to share with all together this first week of school? It's going to be the same number. What do you guys think? And it's kind of that moment. It's hard to be the courageous one to raise your hand first on one of those meetings, because you're like, too small of a number, too big, but you feel anxious. But this bold girl just raises her hand, and she's like, 500. And the rest of us are a little bit more quiet, and that's not exactly the number I was thinking. And so I'm like, okay, gulp a little bit. Okay. What do you other girls think? Kind of seeing people's eyes, like not sure. And one by one, 500. Yep, that sounds good. Yep, that makes sense. Yep, we'll do it. And I'm like, we all have to do this, like even me, 500. And it was hard because some of them have jobs, multiple jobs, and they're in school. But one by one, they all, made their goal of 500 people that first week of school. Dream come true, like helicopter moment to see that. Then Tom and I tallied up the number for the first 2 weeks of school as a ministry of how many people we shared with for the first 2 weeks of school. We tallied up 13,000 people we're shared with in the first 2 weeks. Such a helicopter moment. Totally God, That was fall. And then spring rolled around. And we were gearing up to have a semester just like the fall because we were feeling encouraged. And we got hit with 2 snowstorms. And I don't know if some of you heard about the Atlanta snowstorm. Don't get me started. 1 inch of snow, boxed in our houses, everything turned to ice, freeways shut down, and it was crazy. And we were stuck in our house for 2 weeks, solid, couldn't leave, kind of paralyzed at the house. I thought it was crazy. And couldn't do anything.